His left hand shook uncontrollably and his eyes were distant and hollow. What did Hitler's bodyguard reveal about him after the war? Rochus Misch was Hitler's longest-serving bodyguard and the last surviving witness of Hitler's final days in the Führer bunker. In 2008, he published a book revealing details about the dictator's daily life in those final moments, including his sleeping and eating habits, the state of his mental and physical health, and even what he was like as a boss. But before we get into all of that, here's a quick word on Rochus Misch himself and his journey into Hitler's inner circle. Like many young men in Germany in the 1930s, Misch was caught up in the rising tide of National Socialism. In 1937, he joined the SS. The following year, he was selected to serve in Hitler's elite personal bodyguard unit. The unit barely left Hitler's side, they protected him during public events and private meetings, and they were constantly around the major players of the Third Reich. By 1940, still only in his early 20s, Misch already had a front row seat to the inner workings of the Nazi regime and to Hitler's daily life. Fast forward to 1945, the Nazi regime was crumbling. The Soviets were rapidly advancing through Germany and closing in on Berlin. At this point, Hitler decided to retreat to his Führer bunker under the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. Rochus Misch was among the few that would go with him. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler and Eva Braun ended their own lives. Misch fled the bunker a few days later but was quickly captured by the Soviets. Of course, being Hitler's bodyguard, he was a prisoner of high interest. He remained in Soviet captivity for nearly 9 years and was constantly interrogated. The Soviets wanted to know everything, but Misch was very tight-lipped. Even after his surprise release in 1953, he kept a low profile and for decades held his experiences during the war very close to his chest. However, in the early 2000s, he finally broke his silence. He started giving interviews and even published a book called The Last Witness, in which he recalled what it was like working under Hitler during the final days of the Nazi regime. Many were surprised with the tone of how he chose to talk about his time with the Führer. Instead of showing remorse or guilt for the part he played, his recollections gave off a strange sense of warmth or nostalgia. Throughout the book, Misch refused to discuss deeper, darker questions surrounding the Third Reich. However, he openly gave insight into aspects of Hitler's everyday routine and ultimately how he was as a man. But what exactly did he reveal? Well, to start, he said in a lot of ways Hitler was a relatively normal human being, a great boss, and that his role as his bodyguard wasn't much different than a regular office job. According to Misch, Hitler kept to a straightforward, unpretentious, and relatively boring routine. He held informal gatherings and military meetings late into the night, so usually slept until midday. Due to persistent stomach aches, he followed a strict vegetarian diet, with porridge being a regular staple. Misch claimed he only witnessed Hitler eat meat one time in the entire 5 years that they lived together. He never drank coffee, instead opting for tea, and he snacked on chocolates and cakes throughout the day. After business had been conducted for the day, he would escape the reality of his crumbling regime by watching movies, Charlie Chaplin films being amongst his favourites. Although Misch wasn't sure if The Great Dictator, a direct parody of Hitler himself, was one of them. Misch would go on and reveal that Hitler had a sharp mind and an amazing memory until the very end, with a knack for remembering faces, names, and even documents he read years in the past. Physically though, he was in rapid decline. He dragged one leg as he walked, his left hand shook uncontrollably, and his eyes were distant and hollow. In Misch's eyes, he was a shell of the ruthless conqueror he once was. In his final moments, Misch said Hitler wasn't scared or angry, he was calm as if he had already accepted his fate. Rochus Misch passed away in 2013 at the age of 96. For many, his death wasn't just the passing of Hitler's bodyguard, but the end of the last living link to one of the most terrible men in history.